are nearly 13,000 people out there on the streets, refugees and asylum seekers, adding on the factor of this COVID pandemic and that there's been an outbreak of COVID-19 in that particular camp. This is on top of a security issue, also a health hazard. And that's why we have the Prime Minister now holding an urgent meeting of leading ministers to discuss what he's going to do and how he's going to sort out this situation. But overall, this has been a situation, speaking to several people on the ground here, that's been waiting to happen simply because this facility has been overcrowded for so many years. It was built to house about 2,000 asylum seekers. Now it's housing more than 12,500. And it just underscores the failure of the Greek government, successive Greek governments, to really address this issue of overcrowded refugee camps.
Before the fire broke out, the camp was under quarantine because some of the residents had tested positive for the coronavirus. How is that being dealt with in this situation?
Well, as I said, the understanding is, according to some sources, that is the reason that led to these fires breaking out. It's not the first fire we've seen in Moria. It's been a method of protest by people, asylum seekers who are in there, either frustrated by delays in the asylum process, and now by the isolation process that was going into force because of several cases that had been detected. There was an attempt to draw about 35 of these cases outside the camp, taking them to undisclosed locations. And that triggered apparently some kind of protest. And many of these people started setting up fires around, girdling the actual camp. And that just ripped through into the camp because of these gale force winds that we're seeing here. And within minutes, just a tragedy ensued.
Antti, thank you very much for talking with us. That was Antti Karasava there in Athens. Well, for the bigger story now, we're joined by former EU Commissioner for Migration and Home Affairs, Dimitris Avramopoulos. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Mr. Avramopoulos, what went through your mind when you got the news that the Moria refugee camp on Lesbos was burning?
As it is obvious, I'm following the situation not only in Lesbos but across Europe, given my previous job as European Commissioner for Migration and Security. Well, it is true to say that the situation in Moria is dire. There's no doubt about it. During the last year, I have to say, great efforts have been made by the Greek authorities to settle the situation. And it's good to say that the number of migrants on the island, before it was approximately 30,000, now they're reduced, they've gone down to 15,000. Due to, and this is the explanation why all these things are happening now, due to a number of COVID cases among the migrants, the community migrants, measures of confinement had to be imposed, had to be implemented. It was obvious. There were reactions, you saw the results, but they to understand, all of them, that they have to comply with the instructions of the authorities. The Greek authorities have taken care of the situation, and the Prime Minister, as Mrs. Karasava said before, has taken over himself along with committee ministers. And right now, there is a ministerial meeting held by the Prime Minister in order to give an end to this situation. Okay. But let's go beyond this picture. Why all these things are happening? Because in this part of Europe, there is still a migration crisis. Besides what has happened in the past, there are still flows, and the cooperation between the Greek and the Turkish authorities got weakened because of the political crisis that it is ongoing right now in the European Union, standing by. And today, assurances were given by the competent commissioners that they will support Greece. But the EU-Turkey statement should be updated and keep working, and as it was happening till last August.
I want to ask you more about that in just a moment, but first, just about the Moria camp there. You said that the numbers have been reduced on the island of Lesbos, the number of asylum seekers, but more than 12,000 people were housed at that Moria camp, which had an official capacity of less than 2,800. Conditions were dire, as you yourself said. Why was that situation tolerated for so long?
Well, I'm not responsible to speak on behalf of the Greek government because I don't have any institutional role, but I know the situation given my previous job. So progress had been made. But in the meantime, we have to say that there were also reactions on the island. It is not easy to handle this very delicate situation. The Greek authorities have provided with whatever they could these desperate people. Humanitarian aid, medical services, everything they wanted to have. But it is true also to say that a number of migrants were stuck there, and the hotspots were overwhelmed by the big number of new arrivals. Now, it is not a Greek, it is a European issue, and the European Union has to stand by Greece, and this was the assurance given today by the competent European commissioners.
Okay, Mr. Avramopoulos, you were Migration Commissioner during the worst days of the humanitarian crisis involving migrants in 2015. The EU failed to agree on a common approach then. Do you see any more solidarity among EU member states in dealing with the situation now than there was then?
Solidarity as a basic principle upon which Europe is built is at stake. In the beginning, it was the economic crisis, and then we had the refugee crisis. I have to admit that in the year 2015, circumstances had it that the arrival of the first migrant boats on the shores of Greece and Italy almost coincided with the first jihadi terrorist attacks on European soil. A perfect storm at the time. And I was the lucky one because before there was no migration policy to start building everything from scratch. And at that moment, Europe proved that as a union, in a spirit of solidarity, could have done more. And for the very first 2 years, the situation was handled successfully. I would like also to say Germany's role was very important at that time. I still recall the moments that Chancellor Merkel and the competent ministers of the German government had supported a European holistic approach on that. And then Europe
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, Commissioner. I'm very sorry, but we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much, though, for taking time to talk with us. That was former EU Commissioner for Migration and Home Affairs, Dimitris Avramopoulos. Thanks again.